Hi collectors, thank you for tuning in to my first Sidebar episode, in which I ramble about some aspects of comic collecting and try and find an excuse to show off some books. So here's the thing. Today I want to talk about cents and pence. Now, I won't get too in-depth about decimalisation in Britain, because there's a raft of information about that out there already. Some great YouTube videos, answered questions on social media groups, or good old Google. But it also has a special significance for my collection, which I'll come on to. So if you see comics with price stamps on them, you may see things like this. So in the 60s, the first comic I'll show you is this rather lovely Black Hawk from, I think, 1963. Fantastic cover. And that's got the cents logo on it, and it's got a price stamp on it which says D. And I know this causes some confusion when some of my American friends have seen it. So D stands for denarius, which is not a character in Game of Thrones. Well, it might be. I don't know. But that's what it was called until decimalisation, when it changed to AP for pence. So that's an example of where you might see 9D or 6D or however many D stamped onto the book. We also have Green Lantern, because some people think I don't like DC. Well, I do like DC. And here's a Green Lantern from 1963. And again, that's got the D stamp on it. So, moving on, just to confuse things even further, pre-decimalisation, as shown in this Justice League of America, which is from early mid-60s, this has got a rather strange symbol on it. And that, I think, represents a shilling. Now, quite how many pennies are in a shilling? I think officially it was 12 pennies to a shilling, although I can remember in Britain a shilling being referred to as 5 pence as well. So I'm going to leave that one alone. But it's just got 1 and a sort of slash mark, and that indicates shilling. We have another one of those on this amazing Spider-Man from 1969. So we're getting up towards decimalisation now, within just a couple of years off. And that's another shilling indicator on the cover. So once decimalisation kicked in, this I think is from about 73, 74. It's a beautiful House of Secrets, and that has now changed to the pence symbol on the stamp. And we can follow that quickly up with a gorgeous Witching Hour from the same period. Again, that one's got a 6p stamp on it, 6p or pence. Very nice. And I love these price stamps. At the same time, the British comics that we had in the UK, of course, had the pence symbol. They always had the pence symbol on them. Dave, or it's still only 35 cents, got some fantastic videos looking at old UK comics. If you're interested in those, I highly recommend taking a look at those. So this is from later in the 70s. And in my collection, I have many American comics with those imported price stamps on them. I only have 4 comics in my collection that were actually printed with the British price stamp on them. This one showing 6p. And there's a reason for that. So this one, Tomb of Dracula, which was 6 pence. Fantastic cover again. Doctor Strange, issue 21, which is 10 pence. Tales to Astonish Volume 2 for 12p. I think that was 1980. And Daredevil 164 from 1980, which was also 12p. So I'm going to come back to these. The only reason I have these 4 pence copies in my collection are because that one's cool. I bought this by mistake. I didn't realize it was a Pence copy when I bought it. It arrived, but I like it. And I also need these 4 books as a backdrop for something. Maybe show you a photo of that at the end of the video. This Doctor Strange, now this is one of the earliest US Marvel comics I had. And I picked this up. I actually found it in amongst some older magazines in a newsagent shop that was run by, or a family friend worked at it. She's a lovely old lady who, when I was on holiday coming back to Scotland, I was living in England, used to go to Scotland for our holidays and visit family. And I would be sent along to the shop to get some bread rolls for breakfast in the morning. And this woman spoiled me. She would give me money for sweets, ice cream, whatever. And rummaging about in the magazines, I just got into these comics and I found this. Now, since parted with the original copy, but I picked this one up again with the Pence sign on it, just for nostalgia, just for nostalgic purposes, that's all. I do love that. I've got a Sense copy in my collection. Tales to Astonish. This was the second US Marvel comic that I picked up, that I ever owned. Not the original copy. Again, I traded that away at some point. Picked this one up for nostalgic purposes again. I picked this one up just because I was blown away by the cover. I think Tiger Shark remains one of my favorite villains. This is just such a dynamic cover. And I read it to pieces. Maybe that's what happened to the original. It might have fallen apart. But this one is the most important one. This is the first US comic that I ever bought. Now, I used to read British comics, cartoon funnies, until someone introduced me to Marvel comics, like this one. Now, I knew who Spider-Man, Hulk, Superman, Batman were, but I didn't really know. I was young. I didn't really know the difference between DC and Marvel. I hadn't really read any of the comics until this guy gave me a pile of Spider-Man Weekly comics and Marvel comic, Mighty World of Marvel, Hulk comic, things like that. And I was blown away. And I read as many of those as he would lend to me through the first year. Until one day I had the opportunity to go to a bigger store in the town I was living in. And this big sort of newsagent stationery store had this massive rack of magazines and comics. And here was this row of these glossy American full color comics. And I'd been given some money to go and get something to entertain myself. So I picked up this and I picked up the Tales to Astonish. The difference is this is the copy I picked up in 1980, which is why the cover's faded. You probably won't see it too closely on the camera. It's very creased, stained at the back. It was rolled up. It was stuck in my back pocket. Cycle around with it in my school bag. It lived under my bed. All these kinds of things. And I'm ever so glad that it's the first one I got, and I still own the original copy. Again, I have a Sense copy in my collection, but why? Well, when I got this comic, when I opened this comic up, I went from looking at British comics, which had British adverts. If there was letters pages, they would be from people in the UK writing in. Some of the editorials, mostly from a guy called Des Skin. I might be a little bit early for that in this comic, but that sort of thing. Everything was very British, and that's great. And I love going back and looking at those now, even though I don't have too many British comics in my collection. But when I opened this American comic, I not only got used to new sort of characters, Daredevil. I mean, in this one, Daredevil's origin is retold. So what an amazing time to jump in. Just brilliant. Also, fantastic writing by Roger Mackenzie, Frank Miller art. What a place to start, eh? But it's things like this. This is an advert for Fun Factory and all this stuff. Now, novelty gag adverts, things like that, weren't exactly new to me at the time. We got those in other comics and magazines. But there's something very American about them. The language is American, the expressions on the faces, the instructions. And I'm reading details like zip codes and pondering, what's a zip code? In the UK, a zip code is called a postcode. So things like that really fascinated me, small background details. Along the bottom, where it tells you all the sort of print and publisher information, it's got the address of Marvel Comics in Madison Avenue in New York. And basically, I got a big American slap around the face, and I loved it. Advertisements for bubble yum and stuff like that. Products, candies and sweeties and things, television shows, a camp cook kit, which you could get via a pack of Whoppers, and all these things that were just strange and unfamiliar. I lived in different countries when I was younger. And in New Zealand, you kind of got quite a lot of American stuff, American TV, and sort of things in the shops. I was quite young at the time, but the sort of cultural difference just absolutely drew me in. So adverts for Star Trek and stuff like this. Now, also, if I skip quickly through all the gunfighting do's and don'ts, make sure your legs are akimbo. Subscriptions. Oh, how I wanted to subscribe to Marvel Comics. I wanted to get all of these comics. And it's a crying shame I'm skipping over this fantastic Frank Miller artwork. Whatever anyone else says throughout his career, this period, I think, where Frank Miller was drawing Daredevil is his best work. I just do. And I respect that other people might feel differently. Grit. Yes, I wanted to sell grit. I wanted to earn prizes. I wanted to impress my family with my earnings. I didn't even know what grit was. I couldn't make head nor tail of it. So stuff like that, and the letters pages. And what used to really sort of strike me, bullpen bulletins, yes please. What used to really strike me in the letters pages was that people would have addresses that sounded weird to someone in the UK. So we have addresses like number 29 High Street. These American addresses had like 6-digit numbers. And I was like, my God, how long are the streets? Because I didn't realize it was referring to apartment blocks and levels on apartment blocks and so on and so forth. But it's just all fascinating. This, yeah, we're going to talk about this on another video at some point because, well, I'll save that for another time. So I was really taken in by this. I absolutely loved Daredevil. It became and still is my favorite superhero character. The stories right through are absolutely fantastic. Yes, of course, it was a long-running comic, and later on in Volume 1, I think it sort of lost its way. I think the way a lot of comic books did in the 80s, or maybe it was just the age I was reaching as I was reading them. So this one, all battered and bruised. I'm so glad I've still got it. Now, I kept picking up as many comics as I could. Obviously, didn't have much of a budget then, and it was a bit hit and miss as to whether I could get to the place where you could buy these US comics. And when I got there, if they were there at all, some months there just weren't any. But I picked up as many as I could. At some point, a few years later, I had a mass of these things, and I started getting in touch through a magazine with other people in the UK and swapping comics. And I swapped a lot of mine away for some older British comics that I hadn't seen, which I kind of wish I hadn't, but I got a lot from that as well. But later on, perhaps about 1920, when I first really sort of became a collector or started thinking about collecting, I took the decision. It was already runs I was working on, but I took the decision that, do you know, this is all about America for me. I mean, granted, what you get from a superhero story be the same to people world over, but there's something so American about this. I decided that if I'm going to collect all of Daredevil Volume 1, And that was me with about probably 30 issues of it at the time, with 350 odd to go. I wanted all cents copies. And it was the 90s before that really became possible, when somebody invented the internet and someone took the internet and invented eBay, and that made life a lot easier. Pretty hard on the wallet, but it made it easier. So all of the comics you see behind you, which is pretty much my entire US comic book collection, they're all cents copies. And these 4 comics are the only Pence copies that I have. But that's why the cents copies mean so much to me. And I've been collecting for 45 years. This has been really difficult. I've now completed Daredevil Volume 1. It was really hard. At times really expensive. And I have nothing against Pence copies. Some collectors in the UK have said to me, you know, why wouldn't you collect Pence copies? It's sort of what you grew up with. I absolutely get that. I understand it. And I love these British comics. It's just purely one of those quirky collecting criteria things for me that when it comes to US comics books, I want cents copies. It's nothing to do with the value or anything like that. And I appreciate that when these were printed, they all came off the same print run. Now, there's theories or statements about British copies and price variance being first on the production run, so they could be shipped off a bit quicker, which I think is a lovely notion. I'm not sure if that's actually correct or not, but I like to think of 2 guys with a big Mack truck and those flat cats going, "Get a move on, get the British ones on first. We got to get them to the ducks." However, it doesn't really matter why. They all came off the same print run, they're the same comic books. And the same with these direct and newsstand variants. That makes no difference to me. Some people will find that strange because they'll insist that that should make more of a difference than the price variant that's on it. But, we all have our own mad criteria. So that's a bit about cents and pence. That's a bit about my collection, and a look at some hopefully cool books as well. So I'd be really interested to hear if there's any quirky criteria you have in your collection, or anything else you have to add or correct me on about British decimalisation or cents and pence. I'd love to hear about it. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, stay groovy.